Foreign Minister of Hungary, Mr. Péter Szijjártó, I first like to thank you for your time and readiness to give us an interview. May I ask what brings you here in Estonia?
Well, actually, I have at least three reasons to come this time of the year. First of all, we commemorate the 100th anniversary of the establishment of our diplomatic relations and 30th anniversary of the re-establishment. You know, we wanted to celebrate this memory on its very day in February, but that was not possible because of the COVID situation and the regulations, so it's a little bit postponed, but it takes place now. On the other hand, we are preparing for our chairmanship of the Council of Europe, where there will be some issues we would like to put on the agenda, and we count on the help of Estonia. And the third reason to come here is that it is one of the cornerstones of our foreign policy to help the Baltic countries when it comes to their security.
We have seen during many years that the so-called liberal-minded European Central Powers aligned with the so-called liberal media are very eager to cast doubts and open accusations towards Hungary and its conservative government. What are the main polemical issues right now between Hungary and European Commission?
Well, look, we are an openly Christian Democrat, openly patriotic government, which makes it very clear that Hungary first. The national interest comes first. We have to fulfill the expectations of the Hungarian people, and we have to ensure the security of the country when it comes to migration, when it comes to healthcare issues. And the series of attacks have already started when we have taken office back in 2010, and it was obvious that we get rid of the former liberal, extremely liberal approach, and we put the national interest on top of our agenda. And then the attacks have strengthened when it became obvious that we promote family values and we do our best to help the families, and when it became very, let's say, obvious that when it comes to family, we mean the definition which has been around for at least 2,000 years. That family consists of a father who is a man, a mother who is a woman, and children, and we do our best to support them. Then the attacks reached their peak when it became obvious that we go against the liberal mainstream and Brussels when it comes to migration. We made it very clear that we preserve our own right, and we stick to that, to make the decision on our own whom we are ready to allow to enter the territory of our country, whom we don't want to enter the territory of our country, and we preserve our right to make our decision on our own with whom we are ready to live together and with whom not on the territory of our own country. And when we made it very clear that we would never accept the obligatory quotas, then the attacks became more stronger and stronger. And since it became obvious that our policies are successful and are supported by the Hungarian people, I think that frustrated the liberal mainstream pretty much. That's why these attacks are going wild sometimes against us. And very recently we made it again very clear that the vaccines against COVID are considered by us as tools to save lives, and we were not ready to consider them as geopolitical issues. And since we are successful on that as well, proved by figures, that frustrates again the liberal mainstream and Brussels itself pretty much. So I think this is, in a nutshell, a big nutshell, these are the reasons for the attacks which have been put on Hungary in the recent, basically 11 years.
Absolutely. In September's State of the Union address, the head of the European Commission, von der Leyen, we heard many ideas which have a strong stamp of ideological dictatorship, actually. May I quote some of them? Speaking of so-called gay rights, von der Leyen said, I quote, So I want to be crystal clear, LGBTQI-free zones are humanity-free zones and they have no place in our union, end quote. In context of immigration and its general acceptance, von der Leyen uttered, I quote again, "We will tackle unconscious bias that exists in people, institution and even in algorithms," end quote. So what is your position on these issues? Do we live already in an ideological dictatorship or are we heading towards it?
Well, it's obvious, I think, that if you are not in line with the liberal mainstream, if you are not ready to accept everything what is being pushed by them, you are immediately getting enormous attacks. You are immediately considered as non-European, as one to violate the European unity and the European idea, and even some worse expressions regarding dictatorship and making, let's say, parallel to the darkest years of the last century here in Europe. And this approach is unacceptable. In many ways, in many countries, if it is not the liberals to win an election, then the government and the whole political system of the country is being considered as non-democratic. And I think this is dictatorial. So this approach is dictatorial. If you are not a liberal, if you are not ready to comply with their expectations, if you are not representing the ideas of the liberal mainstream, you are immediately under attack, and you are considered as a dictator and all this kind of stuff. And we can't accept that. When back in 2015 we were faced with the first migratory waves, we told Brussels that, look, there were 400,000 illegal migrants marching through Hungary. 400,000. They behaved in an unacceptable way. They violated our rules and regulations. They violated the European regulations as well. They have threatened the people. They have occupied public areas. They have demanded free travel to Germany. They rejected the cooperation with the local authorities. They openly violated the rules which we have in place in Hungary. So don't consider them and don't portray them as as victims or as martyrs, they simply violated our regulations, behaved in a very aggressive way. And I don't think that Europe wants such kind of people to come to the European Union in a form of millions, So we made it very clear that we would never accept the obligatory quotas. And if you look at the history of the European migratory policy of the last 5-6 years, you see that the idea of making the obligatory quotas obligatory for all countries in EU, unfortunately is still existing. It might be called now as sponsored returns or something else, which is an interesting grammatic, let's say, attempt to call something in a different way what it is, let's say, factually. So I think it's obvious that this pressure is going to remain on us. And we who stick to our national rights, national identity, national heritage to be preserved, we have to stand up against that very, very strongly.
Last time when you visited Estonia, you gave an interview to our dear colleague from Estonia Public Broadcasting Union, Astrid Kannel, who asked you various wonderful questions which greatly amused us and many other Estonians as well. One question was concerning the role models of Hungary, assuming that they were China, Russia and Turkey. If you allow me, I would like to ask the very same question without assuming anything from my part. Who you consider or which countries you consider being role models of Hungary, if any?
Well, I don't think a country needs a role model. We would like to be Hungary, and we Hungarians would like to be Hungarians. And since all countries in Earth have different geography, different history, different approach, different culture, different language, so why would we make an artificial way of role modeling each other? We would like to be successful as Hungary, and we would like to make the Hungarian people successful. And you know, I think that these kind of questions which were raised with me during that interview show very clearly the biggest problem and the biggest challenge of the international political arena currently, which is the lack of mutual respect. I think if we are not able to come back to the principle of mutual respect to be applied in the international political arena, there will be very, very big problems in the future. I don't understand at all why politicians of other countries think about themselves as they should lecture, teach, judge other countries, other governments, other people. Why would anybody think that he or she knows it better what is good for the Hungarians than we Hungarians ourselves? And you know, you can replace Hungarian by any other nation, Hungary by any other country. We have elections in every 4 years. Hungarian people make the judgment whether they liked what has been happening in the country, whether they disliked, whether they agree with this or that party regarding their future plans, and then they vote. And the vote has an outcome. And you know, when the policies of the Hungarian government is being attacked so harshly, they basically, these attackers basically attack the Hungarian people who made the decision Hungary should go this way. Because the current government has not won its mandate on a lottery. We have won it on free and fair democratic elections based on 8 years of experience of the Hungarian people with our governance. And the fact is that we have increased the number of our votes by a double-digit percentage on the last elections, which means that after 8 years of governance of ours, the Hungarian people thought that this is the right way to go forward. And I don't think that anybody should think in the world that he or she knows it better what is good for us Hungarians than we ourselves. And this mutual respect should be returning, you know, because whenever I build, let's say, bilateral relationship, I never judge the domestic issues of other countries, because this is not my job. So, for example, today, you can be sure that I will not raise any domestic issue of Estonia here for the Estonian foreign minister, because I'm not Estonian. So I could be honest, I could say I don't care, number one, and number two, it's way above my payroll. Estonian people will go to vote on the next elections, when it comes to presidential this year, right, and local as well. They will make their judgment, they will vote. Why would they need me to tell them how I think about domestic issues here? And this mutual respect should be brought back somehow.
Absolutely. Other question always asked here in Estonia is a question concerning Russia. Do Hungary have a kind of a special relationship or friendship with Russia? This was also a question of Astrid Kannel last year.
Look, obviously, we would like to have a pragmatic relationship with Russia, as we would like to have a pragmatic relationship with everybody. You know, here we are in Central Europe. We know very well the lessons which have been taught by history, which say that whenever there was a conflict between East and West, Central Europe always lost. So when we argue in favor of a pragmatic dialogue to exist between East and West, this is not because we would be on the side of whoever or will be spies of whoever, which are really crazy and stupid, let's say, ideas or ideologies. We argue for this discussion and dialogue between East and West because this is our national security interest. Because if you look back at history, whenever there was a pragmatic, respectful relationship between East and West, it was good for Central Europe. So I don't think that our relationship would be more special with Russia than the relationship between Germany and Russia or France or Russia. The fact that our leaders meet once a year, I don't think is a good argument for considering this relationship as special. Whenever we have mutual interest, there we cooperate, obviously, as others do as well.
Does Hungary have hope to have a conservative-minded government after next parliamentary elections? And how strong are the conservative ideas among Hungarian peoples and in the square of public opinion?
Well, what we know is the following, that we do our best in order to protect the country currently of COVID. We made some very important decisions when it comes to procuring vaccines, you know, not only from the West, but from the East as well. because I told you we don't consider vaccination as an issue of geopolitics or ideology. We consider it as a possibility to protect the lives of the people. And I hope that Hungarian people will make a fair judgment about how we have been handling the crisis, both regarding healthcare and economy. Thanks God, last year we have broken new investment records in the country, regardless of the pandemics. And today we are number one in Europe when it comes to proportionate vaccination. It will be a very interesting election, though, putting into consideration that all opposition parties have united. And you know, it's interesting because in this united opposition, you can find former communists, socialists, liberals, Greens, and the extreme right party, which is called Jobbik, whose MPs have called for making a list of members of the government with Jewish background, or MP of them spitting into the so-called shoes monument on the riverbank of Danube in Budapest, which is a commemorational area for all those Jewish citizens and compatriots of others who have been shot during the Second World War into the Danube. You know, so this party now is to be found in a united opposition with socialists, liberals, Greens, and so on and so forth. And no one from liberal mainstream in Europe says a word. No one questions whether it is okay on behalf of the liberals or the socialists or the leftists to unite with such a party on an election. So whenever I meet the international organizations and whenever they start putting very unfair accusations on us when it comes to anti-Semitism, I always ask them, so what you have told your liberal and socialist friends after uniting with this extreme right party? And then there's silence in the room. So it's double standards, it's hypocrisy, but we definitely have to face this challenge on the next elections. I'm pretty sure that there will be external attempts to interfere into our elections. Once again, we're living in Central Europe. We don't live on the Mars, so we know that that in this area of Europe there are always attempts from all geographical directions, basically, to interfere and to influence, especially domestic political developments. So we're pretty sure that we have to count with that. But you know, there were attempts so far as well, many occasions, but since at the end of the day it's a decision of the Hungarian people, we hope that we're going to be successful again.
What constitutes the biggest threat to little nation states like Hungary and also Estonia, in your opinion?
Well, I think the most important thing for us is to be able to preserve our national identity, our heritage when it comes to culture, religion, history. And I think that this approach is under very heavy attack. Because if you look at the liberal mainstream, they try to whisper that it doesn't really matter where you are coming from, your national identity doesn't really matter, the more power goes to Brussels is the better, you know, United States of Europe should be created, a federalistic approach is all around. And those countries or those, let's say, political organizations or governments who think on another way do have to act under pressure, obviously. So we do think that strong European Union, which is our goal, must be based on strong member states. And weakening the member states does not end up in a strong European integration. That's what we think. So we are in favor of strong nations, strong member states, and we do believe that if our countries are going to be strong, our nation is going to be strong, then the European Union is going to be strong again. I think that has been very clearly shown by the pandemic. National answers, national responses have worked out much better than those which were, let's say, initiated and executed by Brussels. What
are the perspectives of Hungarian-Estonian relationship? Last question.
Well, you know, we always supported Estonia's security. We always contributed. We are very active in Baltic air policing mission. Our jets and pilots are returning next September to protect your airspace for another 4 months. We have supported the membership of Estonia in the Security Council of the United Nations. Our soldiers are contributing to the success of your cybersecurity center of excellence in the framework of NATO, where I think we can or we should strengthen the cooperation is the field of digitalization. We understand that Estonia is among the champions of digital economy and artificial intelligence. And we do believe that the pandemic has clearly shown the importance of these phenomena and developments, and that's why we would like to work together closer and tighter with Estonia on that, especially putting into consideration that one of our major goals regarding our chairmanship in the Council of Europe will be how to protect the families and the children against cybercrime, putting into consideration that the life has been, unfortunately, pushed from reality more to the virtual space, and it opens up new chances for cybercrime and extremist ideologies to be spread around, and we have to protect our families and children from this phenomenon.
Mr. Péter Szijjártó, thank you for this interview.
I really do appreciate it as well.